When you travel along the lake, what's your primary mode of travel? And you can pick up to 3. If you bike, you need run, and also use personal vehicle. Kind of choose up to 3. And hopefully it'll start ranking. Yep, perfect. So obviously a lot of vehicle use, as well as biking on the Class 2 bike lanes, and then walking and running either in the bike lanes or on the shoulders. What is your greatest concern you have related to traffic and transportation at Donner Lake? And this is kind of a pick your top one. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the only one you have, but just pick the top one that you think. So obviously a lot of votes for pedestrian and bicycle safety, traffic speeds, aggressive driving, increased traffic, parking. Okay. I think we've got some good information on all of those. Looking forward to hearing those comments and concerns as well. Opportunity to pick your second most important. Okay, so pretty evenly weighted there. A lot of traffic speeding, aggressive driving, even more pedestrian bicycle safety, more for increased traffic, parking. Okay. And then last one for now, list any recommendations you have for improvements out at Donner Lake based on those concerns that you have. These can be single word, this can be multiple words. Again, the idea here is that we receive some of those made recommendations and kind of help us as we move forward and analyze the situations out there. Great. Seeing a lot of great responses coming in. Again, keep inputting those as you as time allows, and there'll be other opportunities as well to provide more comments. And again, this will be published after for everyone to take a look at of what everyone's thinking of potential improvements out there. I'm going to hand it back over to Becky to continue the presentation.
Can you hear me? Is this good? So there was seems to have been some misperception about how we collect the traffic data that's out there that was previously published or discussed for speed surveys. So I just wanted to go over briefly how we collect that data. The misperception seems to have been that we sometimes sit on the side of the road in a marked patrol unit and influence the traffic data that we collect by being present in the first place. So the way that we collect the data is we use some sort of stealth device, for lack of a better word, and it's a box that we fix to a tree or a post or something like that. So in this picture here, the data collector is actually sitting there, and a driver driving into that zone really has no idea that there's data being collected, and that's the whole idea. We want the data to be unadulterated or unaffected by the presence of a patrol car. So the device actually looks like this when it's affixed to a post, and we try not to put it on a speed limit sign because, again, that can influence driver behavior as well. So this is what the device looks like. Maybe you've seen it a couple times out there. It has been positioned at various places along the lake. I'll get to that in a moment. But before we get started, I just wanted you to understand how we collect the data. So with that data, we take the information and we process it through some software that gives us some data that can tell us the average speed and the 85th percentile speed of the traffic that's out there. The 85th percentile means basically 85% of all traffic is going this speed or slower. So on Donner Lake, that has consistently been 40 and 42 miles per hour. The posted speed out there is 35. And the average vehicle speed is 36. So that seems to indicate, based on the methodology that we use for speed enforcement, that the posted speed limit is appropriate on Donner Pass Road. Next. The speed surveys have been posted all along the lake there. These are the positions. It's probably hard to see on the little screen there, but that's where the 85th percentiles post. On the far west, it's 40. Again, 40, 41, 41, 42. There was a slight anomaly over by Loch Levin, so I ran the survey again and came up with 42, and then 42 down by the east end. And that data indicates, the good thing about that data is it's consistent. If there was an outlier in there, a 50 or a 20, then I would really have to wonder about the data, maybe run the survey again. But all these surveys are really consistent with each other. And in the last 5 years, there have been 15 collisions on Donner Pass Road between Town Limit on the west side and Coldstream. So the entire segment of Donner Pass Road, 15 collisions. There was one collision where speed was a factor. And in that collision, in my opinion, it was miscategorized. It should have been categorized as a tailgating. So, but in any event, it points to our statistics that there was one speed-related crash out there, and it was minor. There was a crash there a few months ago with 2 fatalities that occurred with pedestrians walking on the south side of the roadway, and in that collision, speed was not a factor. And of all the collisions, unsafe turning at low speed was the most consistent primary collision factor, as we call it. This is the issue that causes the crash, and if you remove that issue, the crash doesn't occur. So you may have multiple issues, but you have a primary issue, and in this case, unsafe turning accounted for almost half of them. The other half were completely mixed. No consistent primary collision factor there. One number that was a little surprising is I was expecting collisions to be a little higher in the snow and ice, but very low. And collisions are generally consistent along all 4 seasons, of course, with fall and summer being a little higher. That would be maybe, for example, making a U-turn in front of someone, failing to yield from a stop sign, failing to yield from a driveway, something like that. Some kind of turning movement where there's a conflict with the right-of-way traffic in the roadway.
And just for the recording, the question asked was, what was unsafe turning movement? What was the definition of that, just for the folks at home?
This is what the collisions look like when you gain some elevation and look at it citywide, so or townwide. When you look at it on the bottom, those are all the collisions in the whole town. And then at the top there is Donner Lake in the last 5 years. And I compared it to Glenshire and Northwoods. I was very interested in Northwoods, as that also has a similar population to Donner Lake in that very transient, very vacation-oriented, second homes, Airbnbs kind of thing. And Northwoods is a little higher. So you can just see where Donner Lake falls in comparison to the other zones. And back to you, Becky.
Okay, and just another, and on that other slide, an interesting thing, if you look at how many collisions there have been on Donner Pass Road and Donner Lake compared to the rest of Donner Pass Road, Donner Lake, the mileage in front of Donner Lake represents about 60% of the mileage, but it's only about 6% of the crashes. Another metric that we use for crash rates is, another metric we use by transportation officials or professionals is crash rate. So we calculated the crash rate, which takes into account the frequency of crashes and the amount of traffic that's going on a specific road. And we compared it to published average rates that are published by Caltrans. So the top line here represents the crash rates for Donner Pass Road in front of Donner Lake. And comparing it to District 3 in Caltrans, which is Placer County, Nevada County, Sierra County, all the way over to Yuba County, you can see that it's about half the crash rate of the District 3 average, and it's less than half the amount of the statewide average. And then when you look at fatal and injury crash rates, the ones on Donner Lake, it's about half again of the District 3 average and about a third of the statewide average. We do have a fair amount of traffic volumes. We've got a couple different sources. One is our general plan. We did a bunch of counts in 2018. I understand those are a little old right now, but they do provide some insight on what's going on for on a town-wide basis for traffic volumes. We also have our flock cameras, which are our license plate readers, which are used by our police department. Every time a vehicle goes by, it counts. It will count it, and so we can actually use that data to figure out how many cars go by those cameras in one direction. But it is helpful information. The point of this slide is really the blue graph is showing traffic volumes on 267 over the course of a year. And you'll see that there's peaks in both the summer, which is the tallest graph, but then also on the sides, that's the winter. So there's peaks in summer and winter. On Donner Lake, there's definitely a more pronounced peak in the summertime. And so that's just really what this is showing. You can go to the next slide, Scott. Also, the busiest day for traffic is Saturday, and the busiest time is midday, which is different than a lot of other areas in town where we might have a morning and afternoon commute peak. I'm interested to hear what you all think about that, if you agree with that. We also have, every time that we do speed counts or evaluations, we can collect traffic volumes as well. So this is in 2024. This is the week leading up to 4th of July, near the boat ramp. Thursday, everyone coming into town was our busy time. We didn't actually capture 4th of July on this count, though. The next graph is just showing in 2023, the week around 4th of July, and it does include 4th of July counts. But you can see it's just another data point that we have. So we do have some traffic volume data. This one's interesting. It actually came from the volumes that we had in our general plan. This is various traffic volumes that were recorded along Donner Pass Road throughout town. So Donner Lake area is the red area compared to, Northwoods. At Northwoods in the Gateway area, the traffic volumes are significantly higher. The far right bar represents the traffic volumes in downtown Truckee. So you can just see how they vary throughout the town along Donner Pass Road. And we understand that was some older data from 2018. We did look at the flock data, tried to do a similar comparison. We don't have as much data, but it's showing us a similar pattern where the traffic volumes in Donner Lake are much lower than like in central Truckee and lower than in downtown. I want to spend a little time talking about roadway classifications. I think it's important. So we classify our roads based on their functional use. So we have freeways in town, and we have state highways, which are considered major arterials, and we have minor arterials. And Donner Pass Road is a minor arterial. And the purpose of a minor arterial is really to provide mobility. There are major east-west and north-south connectors in town. Brockway Road, Glenshire out to the subdivision, West River Street, those are all our minor arterials. I think it's just important to remember that this is, as you all know, this is a really important east-west route in the town. It's important to maintain that mobility and be able to get traffic through. And, when I-80 closes, it's our only way to get to Donner Lake. So something to just think about. And then we have collector roads, which are meant to sort of collect traffic from the neighborhoods and deliver it to the arterials, and then, of course, local roads. So looking at the next slide, again, this is just looking at traffic volumes with the different classifications of road we have in town. On the left-hand side are minor arterials. You'll see Donner Pass Road in the Donner Lake area. It's on the mid to lower range of traffic volumes that we see on our other minor arterials. What's interesting is that we also have collectors shown on the right-hand side. So these are the roads that are entering our residential subdivisions throughout town. So the traffic volumes on Donner Pass Road and Donner Lake are similar to what we see on Palisades and Martis Valley Road. So there are other residential streets in town that have similar traffic volumes. We have pretty limited bicycle and pedestrian counts, admittedly. We did a count back in 2018. We did a study on the east end of Donner Lake. We counted 33 bicyclists in the peak hour, which is about one bicyclist every couple minutes. And we counted 110 pedestrians on the east end, which is 2 pedestrians every minute. So we do plan to go out and do some more of that this coming summer. And with that, I'm going to bounce it back off to Officer Litchie, because we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing. There's sort of this 3 traditional E's of traffic safety are terms we use. So education, enforcement, and engineering are some things and tools that we use to promote traffic safety. And I'm going to pass it off to Officer Litchie with that.
So one of the first E's there is education, and it can sometimes be one of the most effective ways for us to get a grip on traffic in general or raise awareness of certain infractions that are going on. Last year, we started a program called Break for the Lake, which was, we put that into the social media and we put it on the changeable message board that was installed a couple years ago there at the entrance across from State Park. And it's been effective in that the phrase was catchy, so I think drivers were more aware of their speed there. But the educational component on Donner Lake is difficult, and that the reason for that is it has a very high tourist population that seems to rotate out every 5 to 7 days or so. There's a whole new crowd out there. So when we write tickets, we are looking for 3 different effects that occur when you pull someone over and issue a citation. The first one is we've interrupted the driver from that specific behavior and stopped that driver from whatever they're doing. In this case, let's just talk speed. The second advantage that we have, or effect that we seek, is that passing motorists see that guy getting a ticket and they assume it's for speed, and so they generally slow down. And then the reputational effect is probably the strongest out of the 3, and that one is everyone talking about it. The guy that got a ticket will talk about the citation for statistically 5 to 10 years afterwards. And people driving by will tell their buddies or text them, watch out for the cop hiding in the bushes. So that generally works out very well. But again, because of Donner Lake's extremely high tourist population, that reputational effect is lost really within days. If not immediately. So there's some remedy that can be found there when you apply consistent enforcement, but it has to be constant pressure on that through the summer months. Any inconsistency there, you just kind of lose it right away if you had it in the first place, because again, the population rotation is just so strong there. So talking about enforcement, we can go out and work a zone, but we don't really know how many tickets are too many, how many are too little. And so National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA, has been using a formula for decades now called the Enforcement Index, and this is a ratio between citations issued and collisions that occur. So in general, NHTSA says that a typical city should have a ratio of 20 to 1, and a vacation city like Truckee should be 30 to 1. And problem areas, perhaps Donner Lake, should be 40 to 1. Donner Lake's enforcement index for last summer was 43 to 1. So we definitely worked Donner Lake last year, and this has been continuing this year as well. 72% of all citations issued in the Donner Lake area were for speed, and 23%, and so 1 in 4, was a Truckee resident.
Just to want to touch on a couple of things we have done over the years. If you've lived out on Donner Lake for a while, you probably remember in 2009 that's when we built the bike lanes out there, which provided some additional room for people to move. And in 2021, Nevada County also built some bike lanes out on Old Highway going up the hill. We also, in 2022, we adopted what we called the Townwide Local Road Safety Plan. That was almost a tier-year process. So one of the things that came out in the early stages of that plan development is there was a recognition that there was some things that maybe we could look at on the east end of Donner Lake. And so We did do some improvements out there where we reconfigured their parking. So no longer you can't do the head-in parking anymore, which is not ideal for bicycles going by because people can't see the bicyclists. So we made it all parallel parking. We put boulders out there. And the Tahoe Donner Beach Club, they did a parking reservation system. And the parking actually got reduced a little bit overall on that. And I do think that that made some improvements on that end. So that's another example of some improvements to be done on the engineering or infrastructure side of things. And then on the right-hand side of this is some of our future plans, what we've got planned for the area. We do, as I mentioned, we're planning to do some additional pedestrian and bicycle counts this summer. We wanted to wait for this meeting before we did that, so we made sure that we captured the right spots and the right times. We also are looking at exploring potential bike lane improvements, such as a buffered bike lane. We're pretty much at the point where we've used up all the real estate out there. We can't do much without some significant widening, retaining walls, things like that. So we're trying to evaluate whether or not we have room to make a little more room for the bike lanes, maybe steal a little from the travel lanes. It's something that we're looking at. And then we are going to be kicking off, and Alfred actually will be leading that, the active transportation plan update in 2026. That's really an update to our Trails and Bikeways Master Plan. And what that will do is it will include an evaluation townwide of opportunities for bicycle and pedestrian improvements. It gives the community an opportunity to weigh in on where you want to see those improvements. And it also provides an opportunity for the community to weigh in on prioritizing where those improvements should go. So want to highlight that as kicking off in 2026. And then again, we continue to promote transit and non-motorized travel. We've got the micro transit, the holiday shuttles that we had, like an example on 4th of July, and the e-bike share programs. We continue to try to get people to get out of their cars and use these alternative transportation modes. And I'll pass it off to Officer Litchie again.
For the future, for the police department, at least for Donner Lake, the above average traffic enforcement will continue out there this summer, next summer, and into the future. The primary collision factors, like I said before, those are difficult because they don't reflect speed violations necessarily, kind of a mixed bag, unsafe turning, and various other problems. As identified, we'll go after some of those primary collision factors, but right now it's just kind of a presence and just an enforcement in general. Just a few weeks ago, we were approved for a nice grant from CHP to increase our traffic enforcement abilities, and that's going to include 2 new motorcycles and 3 of the speed feedback trailers. This is pretty exciting, actually, only because it's really going to increase our enforcement capability, and the trailers are great for the education component. The current trailers that we have are usually busy in doing other things. These trailers are way more advanced. Each one will collect all the data that I talked about before. They can also do speed feedback and messaging, and they can do any one of those tasks all at once or individually. And so we can still get the stealth data if we want to, or we can get data when the message boards are up. And the message boards will probably be in service later this summer. The motorcycles are going to have to wait until next year, though.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. And big kudos to Officer Litchie. He actually wrote that grant that we were approved for, so good job. Okay. Next, we're going to welcome the community members that are prepared to give a little bit of a presentation to come up. Before we do that, I know a few people joined after we did the intro, so just want to reiterate that this was a lot of data. We're very data oriented. That's kind of what we do every day, and the reason for that is, we're maintaining and watching all the roads in town, so we use kind of the same data points and information to guide our work and what we're doing. But it was a lot of information for you. Thank you for sitting through that. Hope it was just helpful to understand what we're seeing. And now we'd love to hear what you're experiencing out there. So I think we have Katie, Michelle, Luca, Mercy, Paco, Joe, and Aparna. Aparna. Thank you. Come on up. Team, if you want to give them some space, I think we've added some chairs, so you'll have to share some microphones. We're not timing each one of you. I know that was a question. This hopefully is more of a conversation, but if you want to come sit up here at the dais, you're welcome to. We'd love for you to.
Just remember to hit your mic. If it's in the green, it's on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I just want to first, my name's Katie Hawkins. I am a proud community member of Truckee, and I live over by Donner Lake. I want to thank the town staff and everyone. This presentation was amazing, and we know that was very thorough, data-driven, and we know you spent a lot of time on it, so thank you. How this came about is as just being a community member, I was just hearing from my neighbors and other community members, and then the hundreds of thousands of people that come to Truckee, to Donner Lake, and there were similar conversations that were happening. So I just started to coordinate folks, and so I appreciate everyone's leadership in bringing us together. It's a lot of work to bring people together, so I just want you to know that. But before I begin, I don't really want to use too much time of my neighbors and community members here. They all have stories and testimonials that I think that will help kind of paint a picture of what's we're seeing down there. And there might be some holes in the data, but that's the purpose of this conversation. So with that, I would like to have my neighbor, Michael Floyd, give his statement, please.
And thank you, Katie. I forgot to mention, you push the button on your microphone, so when it's green, it's on, and you do have to speak fairly closely to it for it to pick up, and that's really more for the people at home that are watching.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michelle Floyd. Yeah, no problem. I'm here today as a friend and colleague of Miss Elizabeth Crane, the young woman who was tragically killed near Donner Lake on Donner Pass Road on March 8th, 2025 this year. I'm not here to ask you to mourn. Time for that has passed, although I must say that I'm particularly saddened to see her reduced to a statistic, a single little footnote in the report earlier, because I think she deserved much more than that. But I am here, not unlike the ghost of Christmas Future in Dickens, to present you with a vision of two futures. In the first one, you take action. You commission a calming study. You quickly follow that up with tangible, effective action. You put up speed cameras. You have hydraulic radar-activated speed bumps installed at multiple points in the roadway that retract for snowplows but rise for speeders, preferably launching them very high in the air. You add patrol officers. Truckee becomes known throughout the press and social media as the mountain town where you really don't want to speed. Hundreds of thousands of dollars pour into the town's coffers from negligent motorists. In the second future, you drag your feet, you wait for the study, take performative actions, or ask for further studies. You bottle the issue up in committee. In the good future, a young couple and their dog cross the street to go sit on a pier. Nothing happens. They enjoy an afternoon in the sun while their dog frolics on the water. There are no news crews, no cries of joy, just the peaceful sound of the gentle waves pushing up the shore. Maybe after 5 years without a death or injury, there's a celebration in City Hall for a job well done. In the bad future, another young woman, perhaps your daughter, niece, wife, girlfriend, is walking calmly along the side of the road in the clearly marked bike path when she's brutally struck down and killed. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was a wonderful person. She is missed. Many people in this small town know her. They cry, they go to her funeral, and they hug each other. And then they come for you, not with letters and testimony, but with, hopefully, metaphorical pitchforks, because you had the opportunity to save her, and you did nothing. Please pick the good future. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we're going to have Jessica.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I just want to do a quick raise of hands here just to get an idea. How many of you have been passed at high rates of speed on a double yellow line? I'd like you to keep your hand up if you have been passed like that while there's pedestrians or bikers available, like right nearby. So just to raise of hands, that's the kind of interaction that we're having on the roadways pretty regularly. So I'm actually here to direct my comments to Sugar Bowl and Nevada County folks. I heard in the data, if I understood correctly from the police, that 1/4 of those tickets, correct me if I'm wrong, are residents, right? So this isn't just a tourism issue. This is like an everybody issue. At 7:20 in the morning, when I'm driving back from dropping my son off at the high school, I have tried not to specifically target any of your specific employees, Bridget, but I think that's coming in the next season because there's some pretty specific humans that are doing some of these things, at least at 7:20 in the morning when I see it. But if everybody here is experiencing this, I do think there needs to be some kind of interaction from the employers up on the summit. These are just good, hardworking folks that are trying to get to work, but I think there needs to be some kind of education happening from the employer level and maybe from Nevada County level to help educate those folks that we're not going to be tolerating this anymore. Having been a ski resort employee before at 4 different mountains, every mountain I've ever worked at some point had complaints from the community about employees driving inappropriately, parking inappropriately, things like that. So I am asking Sugar Bowl to do something. We know we have team meetings, ski patrol, parking, lifties, all those different individual meetings that happen need to have some type of comment to the staff that it will not be tolerated, because I think as a community we've shown that we've had enough, and so that would be one really specific thing we can do to bring attention to it. And the guy in the blue Toyota pickup truck, I'm going to find out where he works. So I think if we all collectively, we do have to start documenting and taking license plates and reporting those specifically. I don't personally feel comfortable being the enforcer, and I don't really think it's appropriate, but I think we've had enough, and that's kind of the next step coming. And I think there's something that we can do. And as I'm looking at you, Bridget, only because you're the only one I know that is really one of the biggest employers up there. And there is something we can do actively right now to help stop another tragedy from happening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mercy.
Good evening. My name is Mercy Galvin, and I've lived in Truckee full-time for over 30 years, and at least half of them at Donner Lake. So I'm here tonight to thank you for all the hard work you did to present information and to listen to some of our concerns. It's great to see the facts. I just personally feel like the average speed is a lot faster than what is represented. I can just tell by the noise. I know when I drive 35, how I'm going, and then the volume and the speeds that go past my driveway are incredible. And I also have to say that it's a lot of times around 7 in the morning and 5:36 at night. So I know it's not just the tourists that are out there looking and enjoying the lakes. So, and I know in the past there's been, you don't want to be the bad cops. You want to create relationships with your community, but I feel like ticket, please. Especially the passing. I live in a section from about the Donner track to about Eddy Street. It's a straightaway right there. And the amount of passing that I see from my house in that section on a daily occurrence it's mind-blowing that people are passing. I just don't understand it. And that is a whole different topic. And I have ideas to help solve them, but it's crazy to watch. And the one time that I was passed recently was much farther down, like near Rock Street. So, I mean, and one time I followed a Toyota truck, not blue. But I did, when we came to a stop, I was just taking pictures of them because I was going to call it in. And then I thought, I was in kind of a recognizable car and I frequent this road a lot. And I thought, no, I'm just going to let him go. But he gave me a nice little salute out his window and I let him speed up and I turned around and went back the direction I was coming from. But my main focus tonight was to share how the dock usage in the summertime impacts the safety of pedestrians and bikers and the lake itself. I have to tell you that I was thrilled this year when the striping of the bike lanes began in June instead of in July like they have in the past. In my opinion, it definitely needs to be a top priority of the safety of the lake for the pedestrians and the bikers. Unfortunately, as of today, it's not 100% complete. The one part of the striping that I think is the most important is the section that's closest to the lake that really helps the cars know that their tires should not go over that line. And that whole section is still not painted. So I would love to encourage that that takes a top priority. And sometimes it's not just tires. I mean, their entire car, of course, is in the lane, and it somehow is contagious. Once one car parks there, it's a stack up. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like, oh, it's okay. And I don't know if we have them this year or not, but last year there was 2 lady enforcements, and I used to go out every time, and I would thank them, and I would hear people yell at them and say, I was just unloading, and they took no guff, and but I have not seen them this summer, but I have seen a little police presence, especially last week. I have actually witnessed a bike pedestrian accident because a car was parked in the bike lane, and it's because they had no place to go. If they stepped out of the bike lane, they were going to get hit by a car. So the bike ended up being the bloody one, but there was no alternative for them. Besides speeding, the parking of cars along Donner Lake creates many unsafe situations. I know this can be improved. Basically, what you just talked about, what happened by the state park and up to Tahoe Donner Marina, how you used boulders and you redesigned the direction of parking. And I would like to encourage that the town focus on the remaining 2 miles of Donner Lake. There are sections right next to the docks that aren't big enough for even a small car to park. And one of those sections is literally at the end of my driveway. So I witness cars on a daily basis pulling in and pulling out, which might be part of those accidents that you're talking about. They slow down, they pull in, and they realize, like, oh, I can't park there. And they come back out, and you hear cars honking and bikes coming to a halt. So I think there's some spots along the lake if we place boulders in spots where cars, it's impossible for them to safely park. I mean, every summer we see the tow trucks come and pull people out of those spots because they get down and they can't get out. And if they attempt to get out, that creates another unsafe issue. Let's see. I know there's a lot of extra enforcement during this month especially, but visitors and residents use the docks and the bike lane the entire summer and into the fall. So I'd like to encourage that some of those signs that flash our speeds, I know there's 2 in Glenshire that are still there. We had one for a little bit recently, and it's gone, and the big one down by the marinas turned back and on again. But I would encourage that. And I also know that a lot of money has been spent on the double signage that says no parking in bike lane and no parking between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. because why would you pay to camp in the park when you can just park lakeside? And they do. I understand Joe will be addressing enforcement tonight, but besides striping the bike lanes early in May or June, adding boulders and locations unsafe to park, I believe enforcement would improve many of the unsafe situations.
Great. Thanks, Mercy. And again, I think the opportunity to have further dialogue after this and solutions, I think we're all in agreement, and I'm seeing some head nods throughout the room here, so thank you. Next up, man doesn't need an introduction, but Paco, you're up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Paco Lindsay, longtime Truckee resident. I used to own Paco's Bike and Ski, which I sold a few years back. But longtime bike rider, former bike racer. Just, kind of why I'm here is I ride a road bike a lot. I love mountain biking, but I have some body issues, so I ride a road bike about 7,000 miles a year, of which most of them are in Truckee. Down on Lake is one of my preferred riding areas, so I'm very, very familiar with it. I'm also on the board of directors of the Truckee Trails Foundation. We've worked for years, I think, in a very positive method with the town staff, trying to come up with solutions. The parking issue that was going on down by the Tahoe down the beach, we talked about earlier with the boulders. I know Truckee Trails was heavily involved with the town to come up with that solution. Back before that happened, excuse me, I was hit 3 times down there. Fortunately, nothing was serious, but I got hit twice by cars backing out and once by a car turning in. That situation got dealt with, and I haven't been hit since. So I think there's solutions out there. So I'm trying to say, as a cyclist, I think there's solutions. I appreciate the town wanting to do more studies, because I know the study right before the general plan happened, e-bikes were like maybe this big, and now e-bikes are this big. I ride down a lake all the time. There's a cycling app called Strava, which people run or bike, and it kind of records what you did. I looked the other day. I have the most laps around down a lake this summer. Usually Joe and I are kind of 1 and 2 for the most laps. So I ride down a lake a lot. So I see a lot. So I kind of want to just jump into is that now that there's more e-bikes out there, I see them. There's a lot more bike use. So I think getting the data and the numbers is really going to be important. I'm a big believer in identifying issues, and that's what's been kind of going on tonight, and that's why everybody's here. I think it's identify issues and then try to actually come out to what really is a problem. How can town staff, how can the police department then deal with them? My own anecdotal stories, because I do ride down a lake a lot. I guess the stuff that bothers me, and again, I feel like to some extent, stuff that doesn't bother me might bother other people. I realize that because I have raced bikes for decades. I was used to going elbow to elbow with people at 25 miles an hour and not crashing or sometimes crashing. So my perspective is different, but I have a big empathy for somebody maybe who does have the background I have on a bike. So I think safety is a big issue out there. Some of the stuff that I see, again, trying to add to this, just so Officer Litchie and this town staff can take this in, is I think, first of all, I commend the town, the police department. In fact, Officer Litchie was out there yesterday writing tickets for cars in the bike lane. I see that quite a bit. A lot of times I'm out there, I'll see cars in the bike lane, and I'll see a ticket on the window. So I know enforcement's going on. Could there be more? I don't know. That's up for debate, I guess. But guess what I see a lot is cars parking in the bike lane. What that presents a problem with is now I have to go out into the roadway, and now it's created a very dangerous situation for both bicyclists or somebody who's just driving the speed limit. All of a sudden, a bike veers out. So I think that's something that really does need to be looked at, addressed more. The other issue I have is there's no sidewalks there, and Becky made a great comment that we ran out of real estate, but people are walking in the bike lane, people are biking in the bike lane. How we deal with that, I don't have a solution, but I think that's something that we should all put our hats on to think about. Because you have a lot of people, again, it's an issue. A lot of times I'll come up on people, they're walking three and four across the bike lane. They can't see me, I'm going maybe 20, 25 miles an hour. I'm not even breaking the speed limit. I have to slow down. I have to get out in the bike, out in the travel lane. So I think that's stuff that I think needs a conversation, how we can deal with it. On the kind of the positive side, I really like some of the ideas here, like the education. I think is very important. I remember, I think it was last year, Jason, maybe 2 years ago, there used to be signs that said you get a ticket for parking in the bike lane. I think you were here then, maybe not. But Danny might remember that. I think so. If we get more signage, I think something like that's very. I mean, I think the more signage, the electronic signs, I think that was a very helpful thing. To Becky's point, I think if we can somehow add to the bike lane, or add like the buffer zone to the bike lane, I think those are all good things. I like the idea of maybe having more of the speed limit signs that flash the speed. I like that concept at least. I know I live in Tahoe Downer, and I like it when I come up the hill and I'll see sometimes the car in front of me, and I'll see like 45 miles an hour flash. So hopefully that makes them slow down. So I'll just leave it at that. That I'm totally pro bike. I'm a bike user. I love seeing people go there on the e-bikes to use the dock and then leave. So I hope that this conversation just creates more awareness of bike safety and pedestrian safeties, but how we can make this all happen. Again, I love that this is happening. And one thing I will end with too is that all the times I've dealt with it with my Truckee Trails hat on, I have found that, I've gone to the town staff over the years and things have happened. And that's what I love about this meeting here. So I think we all need to kind of vent what's going on. That's important because there's some, issues down there. But I think, let's work with the town. I think this is a great step forward. And I think we can take all this information and move on with it. So I'll leave it at that. And thank you for the time.
Thanks, Paco. Aparna, you're up.
Hi, I'm Aparna Reddy. I'm a resident of Donner Lake. I've been there for about 10 years. I live near the first set of docks. I'm an avid user of the state park and the docks, or historically I have been. And in recent years, I've really reduced my trips to the docks and the state park because I have to use the road, and I really don't feel safe there at all on my bike or as a pedestrian. I do have a 3 and a 5-year-old, and that certainly plays into my risk calculations now. I really have enjoyed strolling my kids to Truckee and Discovery Preschool just over the overpass. And this year I have done it maybe once just because of the speeds and being so close to cars going 42 miles per hour, as the data shows. That just doesn't feel good without a buffer. And cars are not paying attention. People are on their phones, vaping, doing all kinds of weird things that they shouldn't be doing and not paying attention, going 42 miles an hour this far away from me and my 2 kids in a stroller. So I think, the data is great, and I really appreciate the insights. And a lot of the topic of conversation here has been speed. For me, I think if the speed is what it is at 85%, it's the buffer that we need to figure out and solve. And if we can't, because of space concerns, then it really feels like we need to reduce the speed. I mean, those are the 2 options I'm seeing. The other point I kind of wanted to think through is, I noticed there's a lot of comparisons to other areas in Truckee. I think the issue that we haven't seen or looked at there is that the bike and pedestrian usage in those areas are, I think, a lot less than what's happening at Donner Lake, or at least in certain times of the year. And so getting that data, I think, would be really helpful. And understanding the dedicated space for bikes and pedestrians in those areas versus Donner Lake. And I think the rest of my points have really been covered, so I'm gonna cut it there.
Thanks, Aparna. And then Joe.
Hi, my name's Joe Smith. I'm a 22-year resident of Truckee and Lake Paco. I'm 78, and I've been riding my bike for 74 years, pretty much nonstop, including racing and doing a lot of the other things. One, I want to acknowledge the town and the police force because I think you really do an excellent job overall. It's nice to be in a community that feels so safe, but yet there doesn't feel like there's a heavy police presence, But yeah, as it relates to Donner Lake, it's interesting. George Bernard Shaw was a great Irish playwright that said the reasonable person adapts himself to the environment. The unreasonable person adapts the environment to himself. All progress is based upon the unreasonable person. I think what I hear just listening to all of this is that I don't think you can hardly be too safe because a couple of reasons on Donner Lake is with the speed limit, because there's so much distraction, because of the beauty of the lake and the scenery and everything else, you certainly recognize as a cyclist, whether it's people texting or people are basically just gawking and whatnot. And so when you have a lot of things going on, including bicyclists, e-bikes, as well as people, pedestrians walking there, as well as a beautiful lake as a background, it's very easy to get distracted. So having also worked in an ICU for years and helped treat people that were crushed in car accidents and everything else, whatever you can do to reduce the possibility of what happened in March, you probably have to be unreasonable. So I know that there's stipulations and you can't just arbitrarily say, hey, we want to drop the speed limit to 30 or 25 miles an hour. But if you could do that, that's what needs to happen. Speed is the problem always in all of the accidents, whether it's on the freeways or whether it's in our local towns here. So because everything's compounded, because the congestion there, with whether it's the winter or the summer or the holidays and the weekends, everybody wants to be up here. And a lot of people are checked out mentally. They're in vacation consciousness. So to me, if in fact the speed limit, I feel like a safe speed limit there would be 25 miles an hour. And I know a lot of people that work at sugar bowls, they will, or wherever. Everybody's in a hurry anymore. But that would solve, but if you could wave a magic wand and lower it to 25 or 30, it gives people that do make mistakes more time to be able to react in a way that's not endangering somebody else's life. Related to the signage, I'm not sure, what an appropriate fine would be, but with the signs there, if it said underneath that no parking in the bike lane, let's just call it $350 fine, that would probably start getting people's attention, I would think. Because even if you're coming in here and money isn't an issue or anything else like that, if you're parked right there and you get out and you realize your fender is sitting there and you're possibly going to have to lose $350, and that would certainly spread throughout the town community, our residents there. And I'm not so sure it wouldn't translate to people. A lot of people live in Reno and Sacramento, and so we're kind of a suburb of those places to a certain degree. So I do think it would actually be, in terms of educational and reinforcement, to make the fine stiff enough where people just are not going to do that. Because that really is, as Paco said, is the biggest issue for cyclists, is having to swerve out into the lane because, and I slow down anyhow, so it's probably not going to happen. But that would certainly, I think, reduce that from happening. Other than that, I don't know if there's digital ways that you can track speed. So I know a lot of places then, if you run through a red light, you can get a ticket, even though nobody was there because they got your license plate number. So those things are probably considered to be unreasonable, but I think that's where the progress is going to be made, because this is not going to become less of an issue. I've been here long enough now to realize, and I don't blame people for wanting to be here, but I want them to respect the residents here. I want them to respect the environment here. And so we're really talking about behavior management. And I think the best way to, other than education, and everybody needs to understand the rules and the laws of the roads anyhow, but I think making the penalty strong enough and enforcing those to the degree that you're allowed to under the current law, I think would go a long way to making it much safer in terms of whether you're walking or riding a bike around Donner Lake. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. We have, yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
Go for it.
Yeah, my name is Craig Schaefer. I'm a longtime resident of Truckee and live on Donner Lake for the last 10 years or so. You probably know my house. I'm at the boat ramp exit, the one with the white fence. Once you know it, you stop by for a beer when we're sitting out front. I've obviously sitting where I sit
Craig,
and sitting on my deck.
I'm sorry, Miss Keshton was pointing out that she can't hear you. If you could either speak closer.
Am I closer now? Wonderful. Sorry about that. Given where I am, I see a lot of safety concerns that happen on the roads in Donner Lake. We are appear to be the U-turn capital of Donner Lake where we are, as everybody misses the boat ramp and wants to turn around the other way. It's really stems from the fact pedestrians, bikers, cars, we're all trying to share this little 2-lane road. And I sympathize with this or with what's going on here, because proposed solutions are going to come with negative impacts. They're going to have, with all the positives we want to see, there's going to be negatives. There were 3 things I wanted to just bring up today. The first, going with Paco and Joe and the bike issue. I ride my bike all summer long, not because I'm an avid cyclist, but because I prefer to do that over driving a car. My son, he's 14, does the same as well. It gives him a lot of freedom. Rides all summer long and then to school into the fall until the snow starts to fall. We've obviously deeply ingrained it in my son the dangers Donner Pass Road is of riding a bike, and he's a very cautious kid. A lot of people say, oh, I can see why Cooper rides, because he is who he is. But cars parking in the bike lane, making abrupt, the often illegal U-turns, and doors opening quickly have become a big problem. And it does worry me regularly. I don't like problems without solutions. One of the solutions we've thought about a lot is if we stripe the bike lane in a safety color. We see the green striped bike lanes. They've worked in major cities, San Francisco, New York, big cities have done it, as well as down at Alpine Meadows off 89. They striped where there were a lot of accidents. It seems like a fairly simple solution, not only to keep people to know it's a bike lane, but it also keeps people from parking on it. It gives us more buffer space. It gives it more visibility that this is not where cars should be. Something I'd like to hopefully see looked into. My other point of concern, and what Katie mentioned to me, was where I live, the congestion on Donner Pass Road and Donner Lake Road. The addition of Kenny's Ice Cream Shop, which is a great addition to our area, maybe not our waistlines, is great, but the corner's a mess because of it. And I'm sure everybody has seen when they make that turn, 6 cars sticking halfway into the road. Any given Saturday, it's a 1-lane road coming around that corner with families and kids. I've come around that corner at an extremely safe speed and been yelled at to slow down. You can't fly around that corner, so I couldn't have gone any slower. I'd like, again, coming with solutions. Obviously, some off-street parking is going to be necessary there. The parking that the ice cream shop has is not adequate for what they get, which I think is great that we have it down there. But I think a better development of that corner for parking, off-street parking, would be great. And I'd love to see crosswalks painted there. Again, simple solution that adds safety. Let's prioritize pedestrians. Let's prioritize the bikes. Let's make the cars wait for people to get across the road. And crosswalks are something I'd like to see all the way down Donner Lake, if possible. We have a lot of intersections, but talking about that corner, a 3-way stop sign might be smart as well. I don't know the engineering behind something like that. And my last point, which is a little more than painting lines and something that I've talked about a lot, Jessica and I have had conversations, is the possibility of turning Donner Pass Road into a 1-lane road that runs west to east only, west to east only. And in the summertime, obviously in the winter it would be different, but you go to a 1-lane road, you've got a single lane for traffic, and you have the rest of the space to create 2-way bikes, walking area, as well as a full parking area. Again, a little, outside the box, could take a lot of work, nothing, to do right away, but something maybe to look in, because we've got the freeway to make it back. Could that be possible to turn that into a more recreational area, a more resort-like, comfortable area where we want people to be walking, comfortable on their strollers, comfortable with their kids going down the road. Thank you. Actually, that's all I've got. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Craig. We do have time to have David do a moderated discussion, and I think Jen's going to lead that. But before you do that, I think holistically, this isn't just a Donner Lake neighborhood. The community and the surrounding communities benefit from Donner Lake. And so that was what has happened over the last 3 months with the events that happened in March. And I'm sorry that it took that event and a loss of a community member to bring people together. But it seemed like the opportunity to just coordinate the community. And over the last several months, almost 200 people signed on to a letter, presented it to town council. Town council and staff has made this a priority, and we appreciate that. But it's not just town council, the town of Truckee. We have Nevada County. We have a major employer of the community. We have the Parks Department. Holistically, there's a lot of people that have a vested interest in Donner Lake. Also, too, just Donner Lake is different compared to Northwoods or Glenshire. It has a state park, public access beaches, 2 of them. It has businesses, local businesses, hotels, and an interstate along it. So it is different, and so we should treat it different. And I think that was the point of bringing folks together this evening. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We're going to ask you to step down, and David's going to facilitate. This is the time for questions. If there was any of the information that we presented from a data perspective that was unclear, you'd like us to repeat. If you have other questions, other comments to hear, our town team's going to go back up there, and then I'll invite any of our partners that are here in the room if you'd like to go up there in case there's specific questions related to. I heard some comments about the dock usage. I'm not sure if you're clear what that is or not, or maybe somebody could provide some clarity what you're seeing down there, and that might help Sven understand that. And then I'll ask Pat if you could just do another introduction of yourself so people know who you are. Sven, I think most people know who you are, but if you want to do an introduction, that would be great as well. And then while everybody's getting settled, Scott has a final Mentimeter that we're going to do, and then David will pass it over to you after that.
Okay, thanks, Jen. So one more time, going to ask you to pull out your phones again. Only 3 questions this time, just to help out gather some more information. Same thing, QR code, unless you're still on the website. Oops, sorry. Keep going. Once I see all the phones go down, I'll pull it up. Good. Okay. Okay. So the first question is, where do you see the most pedestrian activity? So this is just pedestrian, just walkers, runners. Where are you seeing them? Near the state park and Tahoe Donner Beach Club, between Tahoe Donner Beach Club and Sticks Market, including at the market, maybe crossing back and forth, between Sticks Market and Donner Lake Road, or between Donner Lake Road and South Shore Drive.
It's about mid-lake.
There you go. Yep.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that would be the one between Sticks Market and Donner Lake Road would be that section. Okay, so we're looking at mostly near the state park and Tahoe Donner Beach Club, so near the east end, but also around Sticks Market. Kind of the other 3 seem to be similar popularity there. Okay. Now we're going to do pretty much the same question, but now we're talking about bicyclists. So utilizing the Class 2 bike lanes, where are you seeing the most bicycle activity? Okay. So again, pretty even between the first 2 near the state park, and also between Donner Lake Road and South Shore Drive. So kind of at both ends of the spectrum there. Obviously, bicyclists, if they're going around the lake, they'll be on all sections of it. Understand that one, but kind of just the heightened levels of bicycle traffic. Okay, and then the last one: where do you see the most parking violations? Yeah, so the first one, as was kind of mentioned, that's where the guardrail section is, the kind of the narrower section of the south side of Donner Pass Road. Okay, appreciate everyone's involvement with the survey. It's helpful for us to see where everyone's at. So, and we'll publish all this after the meeting as well.
Yeah, so if you have a question or a comment, just raise your hand. David will come to you with the mic. He's been charged with making sure we try to give everybody a chance to speak that wants to. So he's not going to rush you along, but he is going to try to make sure we get to everybody. So, David, it's up to you.
I also want to say, don't be offended. I'm not going to hand you the microphone. I'm going to hold on to the microphone. I'm going to run around the room. If you've got multiple questions and you see other people who have not asked a question yet, maybe just hang on until things start to settle down so we give everybody an opportunity to talk. As Jen mentioned, you're not going to be timed, but we are, because we're doing translation, we do want to speak clearly and concisely so that folks at home can understand what we're talking about. Who wants to go first?
Thank you. I only have three things. One is I do agree that we need to colorize our bike lanes. I think that's a good idea. I see it everywhere else I ride, and I'm an avid cyclist. The other thing is I just got back from the Netherlands. If you want some really good advice on bike lanes, go there because they have lots and lots of good suggestions. And I do not live on Donner Lake at this point. I used to, but I'm in Tahoe Donner. And although I don't want to take anything away from Donner Lake, because I think it's important, Northwoods has not one single piece of paint been put on the bike lane at this point. It's completely old paint. So we need to do everywhere. Thank you.
All right.
I'm just curious what the fine is for the parking violations. How much is that fine?
Who wants to answer that?
I can answer that. I just issued a few today. The base fine is $35, and then there's an administrative government fee that's put on top, which is $11.
So to me, that sounds like a nice parking fee for the day. And I think that people are repeat offenders that get those possibly. I think that is with the idea of putting a stiffer fine up and putting that on the signage and increasing the signage. I'm in that section where all of those parking violations mostly occur and where the cars slide off onto the lakeside. We have, dirt going down. The road is getting diminished. Every single day, somebody tries to park in an area that is not safe to park in. Not to mention, they can't see because they're at an angle. They can't even look in their rearview mirror to see if there's pedestrians or bicyclists coming because their rearview mirror's looking up at the sky. So I think we really need to look at where are the safe areas for parking and really take a look at limiting the parking in the unsafe areas where cars routinely go over the side and routinely have parking violations. I mean, where you write most of your tickets, by pump station number 2, probably. There are 3 docks right there, so it's a high-use area because there's 3 or 4 docks that people can walk to. There just is limited parking, and people are going to park in the dirt. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Hello. I'd like to follow up a little bit on that point. My name is Pat Perkins, and I'm a principal engineer with Nevada County. And we had a very similar kind of issue going on up at Donner Summit over the last couple winters where people would park halfway in the lane, halfway out of the lane, neck the lane down to basically one lane trying to get through. The fines, as you mentioned, were so small that people basically wrote it off and said, hey, that's the cost of doing business, and they parked there anyways. What we ended up doing was changing out the signs, and we put up signs that actually physically showed a tow truck towing the car and saying no parking. That seemed to help quite a bit when we get visitors that are perhaps not first English speakers. Some are, some aren't. But if they see the sign, it's a quick glance, it's a quick look, and they say, oh, I'm going to get towed. That's a much bigger threat than a fine, quite frankly. I don't know if any of you have had your cars towed before, but it is expensive. So that was one of the things that we did up on the summit, and we worked with Sugar Bowl to do that, and it seemed to have worked very well.
Hi, I live full-time at the far west end, past the ice cream shop down there. I want to thank you for the improvements that have been made. It's been clear that we've had some improvements on the east end. It's been great. The bike lanes that were extended years ago, that's better. I want to thank the officer who pulled over the speeder at just past South Shore a few days ago. I was near the mailboxes getting ready to turn up Donner Lake Road, going eastbound, and what you didn't see, because I saw you sitting there over where the bus stop used to be, kind of that area, by the beach, is that before he slammed on his brakes because he was speeding and he saw you, he pulled around somebody who was going to turn right at either into the ice cream shop or up Donner Lake Road over the double yellow line to get around them before he passed you. So it wasn't just a speeding issue. There was other stuff going on. I want to say that for your data, thank you for the data. I think I reduce speeds that you're not aware of because I go 35 and the cars stack up behind me in both directions regularly. So if they're catching up to me, they're going more than 35 and I'm going 35 and they just keep backing up behind me. So I think the speed thing, I don't know, I feel like it would be worse if I weren't there. Twice a day, most days. Okay. My husband was a civil engineer for Caltrans, so he wanted to give some engineering solutions. Rumble strip in the center line and on the bike lane lines. So cars know when they're going over the bike lane and when they're going over the center line. Right now, the paint is there, it's recessed, but there's no rumble strip to make them aware. I noticed that another big issue is people going westbound having to make U-turns because all the parking is in the other direction. It's all on the other side of the road. So there are places where you travel in California and other places where it says passing lane 500 feet ahead. We don't have a designated U-turn location. There might be a good engineering solution, this is my idea, not my husband's, for some traffic circles further down the lake where people can turn around legally and signs that say legal U-turn ahead. However distance that is. There are some intersections where I think we could put in some sort of traffic circle that also the snowplows could handle. I'm not sure about that. And as far as the one-lane road, Craig, I'm sorry, but if you made it one lane going westbound, I'd never get home in the winter when the interstate closes. Yeah. And Sunday was a good example. Frankly, I don't know if you look at quick maps very often, but everybody going home on Sunday after the 4th of July backed up I-80. It was all red on my quick maps. I'm going down Donner Lake Road because I'm coming out to actually put my food waste over here since the one at the hardware store is gone. And I see them. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of traffic coming toward me going westbound. And that's usually an indication that there's a problem on the interstate. And I thank you for the work that's being done on the winter in putting the signs saying no through traffic, no trucks, that sort of thing. And I understand that it's a major thoroughfare. I can't imagine what the backup might have looked like on those on-ramps because I was going the other way. But I didn't look at my quick maps till I got over here, and then I went, oh, that's the answer. So, I understand the interest in a one-lane road and making it, but I'd never get home sometimes if that were the case. So, thank you.
David, can I jump in on the green bike lane comment just to make a comment about that? So that's something that we have thought about. The challenge is that, as you see the bike lane stripes go away over the winter, and so we'd have to be restriping that every year. And it's not to say that it couldn't happen, but it would probably be beyond something that our current staff could handle. As you know, we struggle to get the bike lanes, all our stripes out in a timely manner. So, and it also might not be out for the whole summer. So we could potentially contract it out. It would be a significant cost. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it is something that we'd have to do on an annual basis and probably would require that we contract out that work. would be something that we want to look a little bit into in terms of how long it's lasting on some of those places. But I have seen it popping up more and more in the area, in the snow country. So I just wanted to kind of mention that that's one of our challenges there. It's just a significant effort to put the green out.
I think there's a problem with the speeding that isn't captured by the data, and that is and I live on Donner Pass Road. I drive it every day, or every day that I drive, obviously. And I walk across the road to the lake a lot. I walk the dog. And when cars are going by at 50 miles an hour, 55, when you're shoveling your berm and somebody almost hits you because they're passing, and you've got your back to them, and you don't realize there's somebody on the wrong side of the road. Things like that activate your fight and flight reflex. Your adrenal glands start making corticosteroids and pumping them out, and epinephrine and norepinephrine, and that doesn't kill you right away, but it does kill you. It might take 20 years, but it is severely damaging to your health to live in a situation when you're constantly being frightened by traffic. So yeah, I'm glad that the deaths and collisions are less than in some other places, but I don't think that number really captures the effect that it has on people's mental and physical health to live in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cashton. I'd like to applaud the police for doing an amazing job on the July 4th. I'd like to also compliment them on putting in the various traffic alerts, both at both terminus of the Donner Pass Road at the lake as well as midway. I'd like to applaud Katie and Jen for calling together this forum. I have lived there at Donner Lake for 35 years. I was with the Traffic Calming Committee with Sacramento for over a year. Great points have been brought in. I also did a lot of statistical work with Kaiser Permanente, and I know that data can be skewed or misinterpreted. As a result, when someone or a pet is killed or almost hit on the road, we need to pay attention to that, not to figures on a piece of paper. Now, some of the data up here, Northwoods, comparing Northwoods to Donner Lake. Northwoods has 21,000 people. Donner Lake has 1,400 hookups. One of the things, having dealt with traffic calming, that I think is extremely wise that I heard tonight, which they employed over by the past the Tahoe Donner along the museum. Can anyone hear me? Okay. Putting a buffer between the bike lane and the road, whether it's a little flexible jobber or it's a rock. What you do is several things. One, the bike lane is way too close to a very narrow, heavily used road. But you give a buffer, and by doing that buffer, you do a couple of things. One, you start decreasing the erosion that's happening from the cars parking on a slant into the lake. And in front of my house, we used to have 2 parking places side by side. Now we minimally have one, and it's going down. It's one of the few flat places you can actually park. So I think looking at our lake quality and decreasing some of the erosion by decreasing the parking that's unsafe, basically. Putting these little flexible cones or a rock or whatever you want to do, the little flexible things are safer. It delineates it, reducing the parking that's already jeopardizing not only safety and health of the pedestrians, the bike riders, and the people in the cars, but also jeopardizing the quality of our lake. I think I watched during the 4th that they had a shuttle bus. You know, they have some remote parking areas. They had a shuttle bus moving back and forth that was very effective, that our TART
I hate to use the word tart. In England, it's not considered. But by using that, we can mobilize people to come in and access our lake, enjoy it, and we're also creating a safe environment for our residents and our tourists. We need to remember that this is not just a vacation place, but this is a residential neighborhood. And we need to start treating it that way. We also have been the adopted stepchild of the town in the 35 years I've lived here. And we need to realize that that lake draws in a lot of people and a lot of money. And we need to put in some simple things like a pedestrian sign, put in a stop sign mid-lake. One of the effective things we found is when people are coming off the roundabout on the east end, they then have to come to a stop so the pedestrians can cross to the lake or go to the store or go to the restaurant. Then they have to pick up speed, but they don't get to the 60 and 70 miles an hour. We watch from our living room on an hourly basis. We are here full time. And when I looked at some of this stuff, it's very hard to say, well, is the speed over here or over here or over here? Listen, they're just going. And that's a statistical skew. We need to understand that we truly have a problem. Let's implement some signage. I love the idea about the signs. Put up a little fine sign, put a little tow sign. And they could be funny signs. We have a sign at the entrance as you're coming in that they do for the Firewise, that we get the kids at the high school to do. They're effective. They're simple, they don't cost a lot of money, and they can make someone think. This is not just me on vacation. This could be my son, my daughter, my grandpa crossing a road and getting killed. So I think signage is one of the things we need to do. I think separating the bike lane from the speed lane is another intervention that we need to try to figure out. I really appreciate this forum, and I thank you very much for everybody that's supporting it.
Hi, I'm Julie. I live in Coldstream, full-time resident. I think there's something that maybe the data doesn't show, which is near misses. I've been a bike commuter my whole life, and I've had several encounters or close encounters with cars, and very few, only one of them has ever resulted in an actual, emergency services call out. So I think there's a lot of potential near misses. I think I'm here for Donner Lake because Donner Lake is in my backyard, but I do actually think this is a problem with all the minor arterial roads in the town of Truckee. None of those are actually really nice to walk down or to bike down, but they're great ways for people in those neighborhoods to get into some of the areas where they want to go recreate. Maybe they want to go into town to have food and stuff like that. So I think it would be interesting to think about what are some of the solutions that, would work across the town to make our minor arterial routes a little bit more bike friendly and pedestrian friendly. I think some of the solutions that I think I'm a fan of, it doesn't feel good to be walking or riding a bike down a street where the cars are driving 40. So I think maybe 35 is actually too high of a speed limit, and I am personally in favor of a lower speed limit through there. I think systemic solutions that don't require constant presence from law enforcement would be really great to figure out. I think, potentially even eliminating parking, because I think one of the things that makes traveling as a pedestrian or a bike is cars turning in and out. If there's no parking, then people aren't turning in and out as much. Obviously, that's tough. A lot of people come into the lake to recreate, but to the points raised before, maybe some more shuttles, some public transit to bring people in, and additionally, more of the bike shares, right? Those are getting a lot of usage now, and that's great. And then, I think one way is really interesting. It definitely poses some challenges, but just whatever we can do to kind of increase the space there for bikes and pedestrians, I think is an interesting way to think about it. And eliminating parking could be one way to do that.
Thanks. Let's go to this side of the room.
Sorry, Danny. I'm a retired police chief, so I have a little different perspective. The town of Truckee is not real comfortable with enforcement, to include aggressive enforcement, and I understand the balance, but this particular traffic problem in my opinion, requires aggressive enforcement. Questions are, what were the highest speeds, highest average speeds of that 15% in the survey? How often, as far as days and hours per week, is the police department doing traffic enforcement? What are the number of citations that were issued and for what violations, say, for the last month? Because it's still 15%. That's 15 out of every 100 drivers is going over the speed limit. Do your patrol officers work speed enforcement? And do you have dash-mounted radar units in your patrol cars, which we used to have, but were taken out by a previous chief? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, John. Let me just address that real quick of what I can. I don't have all the data points right in front of me as far as citation data of how many citations we've written out there over the last 30 days. I can say that our traffic team, so we do have a dedicated traffic unit, as you know, where we have 2 dedicated officers that are assigned to handle any type of traffic-related situations. The purpose of that is to have a traffic officer on 7 days a week, so there's full coverage across the week. So they split the week. As far as radar-mounted radar units, yes, we are having those reinstalled. There's probably 1 or 2 cars that don't have it right now. And yes, all of our officers, part of their responsibility, this is the number 1 complaint across town, is traffic-related issues, whether it's speed, which is the primary most popular complaint that we get, but all of our officers are required to work traffic enforcement. So we do have various options in order to report that through C-Click Fix, through our website that you can report these types of traffic enforcement requests, and so that goes directly to our traffic team, and those are what the traffic team focuses on. So I will get you that data as far as how many sites, and I know our traffic team has been very busy, but we also got to understand that our traffic team isn't just the Donner Lake traffic team, right? We've got a lot of complaints, and we only have so many pieces of equipment, whether they're speed feedback signs. And, with this grant that we're going to be getting, we're going to receive some more equipment that I think is going to help with that. But, it's trying to do a lot with what we have. And I think we're doing a pretty good job of it.
Are you going to hold it? Okay. Good evening. Shauna Doherty, and I live on Moraine Road, and I appreciate this process. 3 things. One is I worked on a project with Placer County at Speedboat Beach, and that was related to parking, and they upped the fine to, I just rechecked it, and it's up to $450 in the summer. So it's just something to look at. I think they are not having problems anymore. Secondly, I guess my question is, why wouldn't we just change the speed limit to 25? Because we have the ability to shape the experience as to what we want. And maybe we do it as a pilot, and we say for 2 years, we're going to increase enforcement and we're going to move the speed limit down to 25 and see if we notice a difference, and do it as a pilot. And so that's my suggestion as far as the vision of doing something. And then my last thing is a small little anecdote is on Sunday, I took my 89-year-old mother to Donner Lake for the first time, and we had to get in. The way I got her into the lake is I remembered that the Park and Rec District has a handicapped entrance. So for the first time, I've lived at Donner Lake 25 years, and I went to the handicap entrance at Donner Lake. And not only did I get her in the lake, but I met 5 other people who were using canes to get into the lake, who were driving up from Lake Tahoe because they said that there's no access on the North Shore for them to get into the water, and it means a lot to them. So that's my anecdotal story of this amazing experience that I had at Donner Lake, and to thank the Park and Rec for that, because it's being used and it's amazing. So nothing to do with the traffic, however. If we slow down, there's so many more things to enjoy.
Perfect. Shauna, can I just address one point of that? So when we talk about reducing speeds and arterial roads and how that looks, I know that that's a engineering standard when we talk about 85th percentile, right? We've heard that a lot, but it's also a court standard. So when we're in traffic court, the commissioner is going to ask, what's the speed survey and what's the 85th percentile. So in a lot of those situations, we need to write at or above what the 85th percentile is based on speed surveys. So there is some changes with the road designation that we can make if it's considered like a local road, which a lot of our roads are or can be if they're not already. So, I mean, that's just a piece of the puzzle of just not necessarily just prematurely, reducing speed and solving the problem. But engineering might be able to add to that a little bit.
Yeah, I want to add a couple things just about we could, if we went out and reduced the speed limit to 25, for example, so there's some challenges with that. What we found is when you lower the speed limit, just reducing the speed limit and putting signs out doesn't actually change behavior. So what you end up with is requiring more enforcement, or a lot of times it needs to be coupled with other improvements, infrastructure and engineering improvements, to actually get people to feel like they should be driving at a slower speed. The other thing is when you if you arbitrarily set a lower speed limit, and this is where a lot of these guidelines come from, there is challenges when you have people, more variation in speed. So you have people going what feels right, which would be the 35, and then you have people going 25, and that difference actually can create a less safe road just because you've got this variation in speed. So you actually want people to be driving at a consistent speed. So that's some of the reasons where these standards come from. So, and again, I would say that just changing the speed limit, it really doesn't do much to actually reduce the speeds. It needs to come with other measures. And I'd offer Scott or even Pat to add to that, because I know you have some experience with this.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is great kind of information there. The only thing I'd add is that also when you create these arbitrarily low speed limit zones where drivers know that that's not what the speed limit should be, just based on how the roadway is configured, it kind of lessens the effect of the zones that do actually need lower zones, such as school zones and other areas that really do need maybe a lower 25 or 15 mile an hour zone, kind of lessen the effect of it. So, yeah, definitely caution against arbitrarily low speed limits.
So my comment is actually along these same lines. So it's great that we're having this conversation. As my previous comments mentioned, we've all experienced being passed at high rates of speed. And I love the data that you guys are collecting, but I noticed, that infographic where you put up all the dots where you were collecting that data, and it's showing very clearly that we don't have a speeding problem. We're all experiencing a speeding problem. And so if we're going 35, people are definitely passing us at high rates of speed. I'm wondering if it might not be helpful, because you guys are doing a fabulous job. Like I've been so impressed by the police presence, and I feel like it is helping and making a difference. I'm wondering if we're missing out on exactly where those high speed passing is happening, and maybe we can target that and help eliminate some of the problem. We're all in the room here right now, and I know I don't live on Donner Pass. I live all the way around on South Shore, but I'm experiencing that on South Shore Drive. Can anybody else speak specifically to where we need to address the high speeds that we're seeing? Maybe it's just like a pinpoint thing that you guys haven't quite seen yet. And can anybody else tell me exactly where that's happening? Because I know I'm experiencing it by the guardrail, but might that be helpful?
Yeah, as far as the speed data collection and what you've seen as far as what the 85th percentile is and then what the average speed is, that doesn't capture everything that device captures. So it's capturing all speeds and all volume. So there are those outliers that are going 50, 55, sometimes a little bit higher than that. And those are the ones, those are like target number one, right? But those are usually early in the morning or later at night. Not to say that that's okay, but that's where we're seeing it in the data collection. So it is there. You're absolutely right. We are not discounting that there are the speeders. I mean, that happens in every single neighborhood, in every single community in this country. But those are our targets. Those are the target number ones that are really driving recklessly. So that is actually happening for sure.
I'll just add, Luca, I think you make a good point, and I think we've gotten some good information out of what we've heard. I've heard you say Donner Track to Eddy and Rock Street are areas you're seeing. We heard comments about 7 a.m. to 7:30-ish and 5:30 to 6-ish seem to be what you're experiencing. So that's helpful for us to know and track. And then obviously the Mentimeter pointed out State Park and the Donner Lake. I wrote them very poorly, so we'll have to go back and look, but we have that information from that too. So I think that's helpful for us to kind of focus in and narrow in on.
So with the traffic study in the 85%, it feels a bit like it's a self-fulfilling prophecy to have a 35-mile limit, and then people are falling within 5 to 7, 8 miles or above that, because that's the speed limit. That's what people are going to go. And if we had a 25-mile sign, I wonder if it would be the same, and it would be 5 to 7, 8 miles above that.
Thank you, everyone, for your time. I know everybody in this room is stewards, whether it's for the community or for our neighborhood or for the local businesses. I think when we look at the data, look at points of interest and points of recreation for the town. And the docks and the piers are so important to not just the people in the community, but to really everybody in the region. And we want to make sure that we have those in place for the long term. 37 piers on top of State Park, on top of 2 marinas, as well as the businesses. And if you look at the data of having no buffer zones and 0 crosswalks from the roundabout all the way as far as you can go west on Donner Pass Road, having buffer zones can help to, make sure that this right now, the average of 42 miles an hour is saying the same amount of people going 34, the same amount of people are going 50 on that road, which is absurd. So I think really looking at how do we look at pedestrian traffic, how do we make sure that we can add some buffer zones which can address and help empower law enforcement, because we want to empower law enforcement as much as possible as a community to help us address the problem, because we feel like we own it. I've been at Donner for 18 years, and it's and I look forward to the next 18. So.
Can I ask for some clarification on, just I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. We talk about buffered zones. When you say that,
Like a crosswalk, a stop sign.
okay, and are you talking about the separation between the bike lane and the travel lane as well?
Perpendicular.
Perpendicular, okay.
A couple of thoughts onto that too. I once counted all the driveways that are in that 3-mile stretch, and I don't have the number in my head right now, but I did count them. Do you remember, Katie? Was it close under 200 driveways in a 3-mile section? So that's something else to add into that equation. And it is a neighborhood. So there's that many driveways, and then there's a few of the roads, that come down. There's houses above those too. So there's more of a neighborhood presence. And then a thought. I don't know. When we're comparing Northwoods and Glenshire, I've noticed that in Glenshire, they have on Glenshire Drive, there's a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, there's a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, and there's a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit on Glenshire Drive. And they also have 2 of those signs at the beginning and the end that flash. And I'm just wondering, we have a pretty strong presence and conviction from the neighborhood. I mean, could we, as residents, purchase them? Because I've noticed they're attached to, I see how they're temporary. I mean, I don't know. I think I could GoFundMe 3 of those signs.
Yes.
We actually have a policy on, you're talking about the speed feedback signs. We have a policy, it was first adopted in 2013, we just updated it in 23. There's actually a location just west of South Shore Drive, which is eligible for one of those signs. Our policy works that you need to find a funding source for it. And so that is something that could potentially be consistent with our policy. We don't have a location identified in the other direction, but there is, and it has to do with the changing character. We tried to place them in locations where there's a change in character. So when you're entering Glenshire, there's a change in character of the road. When you're entering Donner Lake area on Donner Pass Road, there's a change in character of the road.
And the police department has a few of those signs that we put out all the time. So those are deployed at all times, really, during the summertime especially.
I'd like to jump on the lady's comment about number of driveways per square mile. I would like to also encourage everyone here to start reading the California State Vehicle Code, which most towns and cities in the state are duty bound to follow the provisions that are laid out in that area. And that vehicle code specifically addresses the number of driveways per quarter mile, which is, I believe, about 13 driveways per quarter mile, to classify that street as a residential street rather than a major arterial. And this is a distinction that definitely needs to be made, not only in Donner Lake. I live in Tahoe, Donner, and I know that there are problems over in Glenshire too. The whole town has these problems on main arterials. They talk about having 164 miles of road that they need to police and enforce. Well, my solution is very simple for that. If you live on a street that has a 25 mile per hour speed limit, I think most of us have lived around here long enough to know that if someone is misbehaving on that street, we know who that person is, and we either take it up with that person as a group, and if we don't feel comfortable doing that, then we resort to having the police and we report them doing that way, and that situation gets handled. When you live on a main arterial at 35 miles per hour, you don't really have that chance when a car is speeding by at the 85th percentile, which is 47 miles per hour in a 35 mile per hour zone, which I think is way too dangerous at fast a speed, depending upon the width of the road. So once again, I would encourage everyone to get acquainted with that, with the California State Vehicle Code book, and that was advised that a sage old civil engineer that was the lead civil engineer for the town of Walnut Creek for over 15 years suggested to me. And there's a lot more that you guys can find out about that and use as leverage. Thank you.
Another.
Just to follow up, the recent comments go to the point that these are not arbitrary speeds we're talking about. These are residents. I don't live there, but these are residents that live there. And you look at the number of residential homes on the one side of the street. And again, the town is reluctant to change speeds, crosswalks, marked crosswalks. We don't have marked crosswalks on Brockway with a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. We have a strange form of a not lawful crosswalk that I've never seen anywhere else in the state of California on Brockway. We will have more fatal vehicle-related traffic collisions. Whether it's tonight, next week, we will have more. Our question is what is the town manager, town council, and the town management going to do to decrease the likelihood of those accidents?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, hi, my name is Peter Gurdon, Donner Lake resident. I moved to Truckee in 1979, and at that time, the speed limit on Donner Pass Road at Donner Lake was 45 miles an hour. At some point, it got changed to 35, probably in the early 80s. There was no big hoopla about changing it. It was just changed one time, and the new signs were up, and that was it. So how did that happen? Number one, did Nevada County do it? But it was 45, and people were driving 55 regularly, no problem. So I'm just saying a reduction in the speed is a doable thing. Maybe we look at 30 miles an hour at this point, but let's get serious about it. We have history there of reducing it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Peter. Long time no see. Just a follow-up. When I was talking about putting a buffer between the bike lanes, you're going to reduce some parking, but the parking is already dangerous. We want to reduce that. But the other thing I'm going to say with the bikers that come down the hill and go up the hill in front of my house, they're like applying to the Olympics. And when you have cars that open a door, because they're not They're visitors. They don't see the guy coming 60 miles an hour on his bike down the hill, and somebody's going to get hurt. So by putting a buffer, you also increase the safety of your people that are riding bikes, because I don't think I want to get in the way of those Olympians. I had another thing I wanted to say, but I think I'll let everybody else say. So many people have said many good things.
I just had a thought, and I applaud all you bikers out there, and I'm grateful that you're out there exercising, but there are pedestrians on those, and it is a bike lane, but there are going to be people walking. Secondly, maybe we could enforce single lane biking. I know you want to socialize, but Donner Lake is not the place to go 2 abreast or 3 abreast when you're biking, because it definitely impairs the driver coming by, because now we're swerving around you. I know you feel very comfortable doing that, but from a non-biker driving, it is annoying to see you come out of the bike lane. I want your safety too. Single lane, signage that says single lane biking would be helpful.
Thank you. You found your thought?
I thought of my other point.
Okay.
I've seen some signage of a little thing at Target that says pedestrians. It's easy to put onto the street, easily to removable in the winter. I saw another sign at someone just as you come into Donner Lake where it says no U-turn. It's on their driveway. I think what we can do as a community effort in doing some of this signage, if nothing more, if it's repeated, it reminds people, you're on vacation, slow down, or take time to get to work. It's not a fire. Signage, I think, is real important for us to get going. Chief.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. We're running out of time here. I wanted to give Jen a moment to wrap this up. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for participating in this and for your decency and your community spirit here. I really appreciated that. Jen, do you want to take it?
Great, thank you. We are coming to the end, but we do appreciate everybody being here and sharing your thoughts. I think we heard a lot of great things that we can go back and kind of noodle through and strategize through. I'm not going to hit everything, so I'm going to list the things I think I heard the most frequently. Scott took very detailed notes over here, so we will go through. If I don't say what you said, we have it. The bike lanes, whether they're colorized or definitely buffered bike lanes, protected bike lanes, expanding shuttle services or TARC Connect information out there to encourage people to use other forms of transportation. Looking at our fine structure, our signage, our crosswalks, safe parking areas, and there were a handful of comments that I think really resonated in terms of what we're experiencing and what Officer Litchie spoke to about the illegal turning. And that's what he's seeing in terms of what our team is doing down there. That's what they're seeing. And you guys really reinforce that to us. So we need to think through how we can help reduce that to some degree. Those were the major consistent themes. There were many more, but I think those kind of cover the broad topics. So if you have not signed in when you leave, please do, so that when we are thinking through next steps, or if we're having another meeting or we're doing some things, we have your contact and we can send that information out. Is there anything town staff or any of our guests want to add before we close?
No, the only thing I want to do to say is just thank you guys for being here. I mean, this is huge. This is what I think Truckee is really all about, is having these conversations and trying to, resolve some issues. You guys have some good points, like Jen said, that, maybe we hadn't thought of. So I just want to commend everybody for being here, and this is our community. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks to the county and the rec district and Sugar Bowl for being here with us tonight. David, thanks for hosting or for moderating for us. And then Andrea and our translation team in the back, thank you so much for that as well. Have a good night, everybody.